Hey, we're live. Thank everybody for joining us at Killer Be Cool podcast, the most unlistened to podcast on the interwebs. I'm here with my good buddy Ryan Quirk from Sparrow Risk Management Group and Dads for Defense. Brother, what's going on, man?
What's going on, bro? Good to see you.
Yeah, fucking seems like it's been a minute.
We don't even live that far. We should probably I'll meet you in the street. How's that?
It's retarded. I can say that, but it's stupid.
Yeah.
It's stupid. So, yeah, man. So a lot going on. Just as side note, so my daughter's out in California. Mm-hmm. They just stood down. She was just north of the Hearst fire. Mm-hmm. But it's, again, one of those things that's weird where we were out in Malibu with her after, this summer for a little vacation, and every place we went has burned down.
Yeah. Yep. It's crazy. Yeah.
Again, it's like, people are like, a lot of people pointing fingers. But what, you can talk to this better than I can. It's not when things go like completely shit. Mm-hmm. It's like a culmination of a few things over a course of time where you're like,
it's been predicted. People predicted it. It's, there's a minnow they didn't want to kill, so they rerouted and they were dumping water instead of conserving it or storing it. It's a complete mismanagement by the state, and there's no other reason for it. You had Anderson Cooper, I saw him on the interwebs, and he was blaming it on people for using their hoses to try and water down their lawns in preparation because it's gravity fed and they used all the water. Like, really? The entire West Coast is water.
You have no idea how water tables work and how that is such, but again, it's like, it's this attack on somebody, some people well, you have a lawn, you must have a house, you must have money. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like that whole attack. I'm like, no, it's got nothing to do with lack of manpower, lack of resources, and creating the driest environment. I mean, California used to have a lake in the middle of it like a couple hundred years ago.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And then farming, agriculture. It's not like you can see these things happen. I'm sure in the turn of the, in the early 1900s when they were starting farming, they really couldn't. Who could predict that? Hey,
Gavin Newsom.
Well, right. We drain this lake to make our crops, our, multi-million-dollar houses are going to burn down, 200 years in the future. You can't. But, you've got to have the wherewithal to kind of look back on things and be like, okay, this is what's happening, or this is what we've done. So what can we do to make sure that we have these resources in place to do it?
Right.
And they don't. I've also heard people talking about, well, we sent all this equipment to Ukraine, fire equipment. I go, before we do that, all I can speak to of my experience is that when you're in a fire department and your stuff gets old, you will sell it or ship it or donate it to another country.
Right. Military, same thing.
Yeah, so I don't know what happened. I don't know the details of that. It's very easy to inflate, the cost of things because it's like, that's a 1979 Silver Shadow. That was, $100 grand. Yeah, now it's worth 10 grand, and we just gave it to you, so just fucking have it. So
take it.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not jumping on that bandwagon just yet, but it's clear that, shit, was set up for this.
I think it was mismanaged. I think you have how many years of the same short-sighted politics in that state. I lived there for a year, got out when the getting was good, and it's just every decision they make, it makes a reasonable and prudent person just go, well, why did they come to that conclusion? That's the most reasonable conclusion they came to. It doesn't make sense. And I stopped trying to make sense of it. That's why I left.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So again, people living there, again, like I said, my daughter he's out there. We got friends.
One of the nicest states in the country, geographically.
Beautiful.
Probably the nicest state in the
country.
Freaking
beautiful. It's beautiful.
What are you doing?
You know, you're shitting on it. So, speaking of which, last podcast we did, we looked at the CIA targeter that was on Sean Ryan's program, and we talked about that. So, you know, all I keep thinking is, you know, based on, and you might want to talk about your background a little bit. You know, are we at war?
You know, it's interesting because I've had the chance to sit down with a couple really great speakers over the past 3 months. I got to see General Mattis speak in Florida in November. And prior to that, I've actually got to see Jack Devine speak twice, who's, you know, former legend in the CIA and now the owner of the Arkin Group. And war, the definition of war has changed, right? It's evolved, even in the past 10 years, even from when I first, you know, got my first taste in 2006. So the difference between war in 2006 and today, I don't even recognize these Marine rifle teams anymore. They look, if you see a Marine rifle team, they look like what an ODA or an SF team looked like when I was in, and maybe even more advanced. They have better stuff than they have. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So these guys are better. They're better trained, better prepared at the lower levels.
I think, yes, at the conventional level, especially, well, I can only speak to the Marines. The Marines at the conventional level are crazy.
But that seems to track because, look, like the original Frogmen or SEAL teams, you know, they were kind of like thrown together, you know, kind of stuff. But now it's just, by the way, plug to Rogue Heroes on Prime, the BBC, about the SAS founding. If you haven't watched the series, it's fucking awesome. It's fucking great. So yeah, big ups. But yeah, so you know, things at their infancy, they evolve, right? It's just like, you know, MMA, it's just like everything else, right? So
it finds its footing. And the same happened with, you know, there was, when there's a new special operations unit, it's the same thing that happened with MARSOC in the beginning, right? MARSOC, you know, the Raiders, they didn't quite know which route they were going to take. Were they going to go unconventional, direct action? And with the global war on terror, what happened was you saw a lot of units creeping into others just because of the operational tempo. So you had, you know, Green Berets, who were typically doing, you know, training indigenous forces and doing unconventional type warfare. They were doing a lot more direct action. And I think as the conflict slowed down in the global war on terror, they got to go back to their respective homes and where they like to live. And but what's happened is technology has just taken off on such a parabolic arc that, you know, you can have a Marine rifle squad on little tiny drones, they throw them, and all of a sudden, and that stuff, when we wanted to see over a hill, we picked the guy we didn't like the most, and we had him crawl and go peek his head over. So I mean,
who's on point?
Yeah, and you know, you get the old school guys like, these new guys are weak. That may be true. I mean,
we're not stupid.
They can't whoop us, but they're probably smarter, because I know the guys I deployed with, I wouldn't let 90% of them touch an expensive drone. So one of my buddies tried to shoot a drone down, found out it was ours. So that was a close call. On the Syrian border, he goes, I hear a fucking plane, and he points the 50 cal straight up in the air.
How big was the drone? Was
not to warrant a 50 cal? It was like
it wasn't a Jersey drone.
No, it wasn't. I don't know what to do about those things. People are like, do you see him? I'm like, yeah, I see him.
Actually, yeah, we had a bunch hovering over the other night. It's eerie, you know. I'm like, they're not moving fast and they're hanging out, and I mean,
listen, I've gone down the rabbit hole. I got buddies that are drone pilots. What's interesting about, if I could show you my phone, is my friend groups are so absolutely weird. Like,
of course, right.
I'll get a text from my buddy who, you know, studied security and risk analysis and has an NSA certification in cyber warfare here, and then I'll get a text. It's just all over the map. And I get every conspiracy theory, every theory I get from somebody who says it's right, and I'm just in the middle having fun with it.
Well, it's listen to these guys because you're hearing like who is it? The Tic Tac pilot was on Rogan talking about, well, it doesn't leave a propulsion heat signature, right? They maneuver in a way that they last for like 5-6 hours. Mm-hmm. They're large size. Mm-hmm. So they're, under the impression, that, and then you've got the Vegas Tesla blow up, we'll talk about that, but that Green Beret who is, saying that it was, it's basically the manipulation of gravity, which, I don't, it has to be because we've had this, we've been messing around with this technology for decades. Mm-hmm. To think that we don't have that is kind of like, I mean, look, when was the SR-7, the Blackbird? When was that? 60s?
60s.
And that was doing like what, Mach 7? That was like a million years ago.
Yeah.
Dude, that was, that was then. What do you think? We're like, that's it. We're done.
Yeah. That's still impressive now.
Yes. That thing could get to Europe in like an hour. Yeah. So you're like, So that was, that was what, well, we don't need it because the satellites. Yeah. I mean, and then plus when the government comes out, they start talking about, well, these are UAPs. We don't know what they are. And I'm like, now I know you're lying.
That's where I called bullshit.
Right.
So where I kind of was on the fence. Everybody's asking me, I'm getting the phone calls and the texts. I'm like, I don't know. I'll ask. I didn't even know who I was going to ask. I'm like, I'm looking at my Rolodex going, I don't even know who to tag in on this one. But what made me finally go, well, we at least know what's going on if they're not ours, was because they were allowed to loiter over major international airports in New York City. That doesn't happen.
Right.
It does not happen. That place, you can't get near that place in that airspace. So, and if they want something to not be there anymore, they can make that happen. So the fact that they were there for hours, I went, okay, they're either ours or they're letting them be there, one or the other.
Right.
That's my belief.
Yeah, absolutely. That these things are not, I mean, look, everyone's saying that, well, when a jet gets near them, they shut down their lights and the shit like that. They only have a heat signature. I'm like, if we wanted, again, my feeling is if we wanted these things gone, they would be gone.
Yeah.
And they've been coming like, the dude, Lieutenant Fravor was talking about, like, they've been, for the last 3 years, they've been coming back around the same time of year, but they're mostly around the DC, Washington, DC and the Pentagon. So, okay. Now they're in Jersey. Like
Jersey's got a lot of stuff, man.
I
don't think people don't realize about Jersey. Yeah,
I mean, up north, Picatinny Arsenal. Of course, you got our president going to Bedminster.
Yep, Fort Dix got a lot going on there, or at least used to.
Now it's going to be Fort Netflix.
Yeah. Well, that's a massive, massive compound.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. But I mean, there's a lot going on in Jersey. There always has been. People just kind of just discount it, don't think about it. But because it's just the proximity to New York and the fact that Port Newark, it's a major critical infrastructure site. Yeah. So, the fact that they're letting things kind of just sit around now, you can argue administration and whether or not they're apathetic and they have, they've let things happen in the past. Yes, they have. So I don't have really any faith in what's remaining of the 11 days of this administration. But it's when the government's like, I don't know. You're like, okay.
Yeah, you're right. We don't know. Come on, man. You're not even trying. Back in the day, the government used to lie to us proper.
Yeah. Just do me a favor and make a great lie.
We're running some drills.
Yeah. And listen, I'm okay. I'm okay with that because I'm of the belief that John Q. Citizen does not need to know everything, even though everybody said we should know everything. No, you shouldn't. And there's about a million reasons why.
I think we should, on a human level, if we like, look, other life exists, right? I think, I think on a human level, we should know because, to be honest, it's like, they've been contacting, if there is alien life, they've been contacting regular people and you've been squashing it, right? Technology, though, I get it, for like national security. Like, hey, man, Yeah, we're not going to tell you we're bending gravity. Tough shit.
Right. That's what I was referring to. Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, you know what? Then but I'm like, look, hey, there's alien life out there. We've been talking to them. We're good. You know, if you see them, just tell them, say hey. You know,
tell them to leave me alone.
Right. So
I got enough problems.
Right. You know, like, what do you want? You know, it's like, what the hell do you want to do with me?
You want to pay my loans? Come on.
Right. Exactly. I'll leave you alone. So, so again, looking at like what happened New Year's Day down in New Orleans, and then you've got Las Vegas, right? So, I mean, let's start with New Orleans. These things related? I mean, New Year's Day is a significant day, so it's not like they just picked a random day to do it at the same time.
No, I mean, look at the definition of terrorism, right? And there's no mistake, there's no doubt in my mind, I should say, that they were acts of terrorism. The question is, why? And is there, the question is why, and who else is involved, and is there another one coming? That's 3 questions. But so if you look at New Orleans, right, everyone was, thank God that it didn't happen until 3 a.m. because I'm sure if we looked at data, the crowd probably dispersed by over 50%. I mean, after the ball drops, you got another hour or so from the people who were trying to get their last drinks before the bars close, and then they trickle out. So by 3 o'clock or 3:15, I forget what the exact time was, but you got to imagine that group had really, really shrunk.
Also, security probably. I mean, your main security force is kind of like
and because it's so expensive. It's very, very, very expensive, and it's stressful for the law enforcement officers and the politicians and whoever else is involved. I'm sure Homeland Security's probably got people there because it's such a big event, right?
Right.
There's always people loaned out, so there's a lot of money, a lot of taxpayer money that goes into a New Year's Eve anywhere in any major city, especially a major tourist destination. So they had the vehicle barricades. There's some reports saying they weren't up, some saying they were, some saying different barricades were used. The only reason, in my opinion, and I was given this advice by a good friend of mine, he always says, think most likely, most dangerous. Right. Most likely what took place was there was a heightened security stance. They were worried about not getting to their objective. Their objective was to cause terror and panic. Right. So they figured, you know what, it's too hot, or maybe there were trucks in the way. We don't know. We'll never know. And they decided, let's wait a little bit. By 3 o'clock, a lot of the details had left. You probably had a couple dudes standing there, hanging out. They're just waiting to go home. And that's when it happened. So that's most likely. Most dangerous. Well, really most dangerous in this instance. It was the most dangerous, right? It killed 10 people. It could have killed more if it hit earlier. So I'm going to take that as an unfortunate positive in a sea of negatives, right? It could have been worse. Right. And to the people who lost their lives, my thoughts and prayers go out into their families. But the fact that what really worries me is the fact that there are other people who have been identified as being a part of this.
That's what I was going to say. What about the explosive devices?
Right. The explosive devices. The fact, but nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense to me in the fact that you asked they're connected. I think there are a bunch of threads that are connecting them that could be coincidence, but in my life, I don't really believe in coincidence, right? The same rental company, same at the same base, or.
I mean, Bragg is huge, right?
Bragg is huge, yeah.
And they're talking about like they do psyops down there. They do a bunch of other shit. We'll get into the Green Beret in a minute because let's talk about the guy who was weaponized down in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. So he's born and raised in the U.S. He's obviously, I guess I would say, I'm assuming I heard he's Muslim. Again, I don't like to throw it out there, but yeah, whatever. So veteran, was running a business was a realtor.
Yeah.
I've seen videos on this guy, very presentable, very articulate, not having hit a bad point in his life with divorce and, child
support. Very common in the military.
Like that. Yeah. Right. So, it's very easy to find these guys now with social media,
Yeah,
like right, and to start weaponizing them, like we talked about the Trump shooter. I'm like, dude, all it needs is somebody to be like, hey man, we've been watching you. And I'm like, we're gonna, some guy like fuck, all of a sudden, next thing you know, the kid thinks he's working for the CIA, working for CIA, and he's like, got a rangefinder.
Brother.
It's
it happens.
Easy to fucking get one of these guys and be like, that guy's insane. Yeah, he's insane. And plus you've got, we look at MK Ultra, where you've got mind control, and that was back, again, 40 freaking years ago. They don't abandon these projects. I mean, I don't know how they're developed now, how they're conditioning these people now. How this guy was developed and groomed, to want to, to go from a guy trying to sell you a house and raise a family to driving down, killing, a dozen or so people, and then getting out and pray and spray against the cops. That's not like that's a huge leap.
That's a leap. Yeah.
I always say, my guys with people I know with like school shooters, I'm like, dude, well, guns. I go, dude, you want a gun? I go, here's my gun. Here you go. Do you want to pick that up and go down to the fucking grammar school and start shooting people?
Yeah.
Of course you don't. Right. So what's happening to do that? Because you shouldn't do that. If you do, I'm going to pick it up and use it.
Right. Yeah.
But so there's what is compelling these people to do this, and it's largely ignored.
Well, I think Americans, one of the biggest things I've been saying for years is Americans don't actually understand what hate is anymore. All right. And I'll elaborate. So for the past, it's really been happening. It started I'd say about 10 years ago, but it really hopped into overdrive with this past administration. Even before, it was at the end of the previous administration of this one and this one, where words, people forgot the meaning of words, or just decided arbitrarily, this is the new meaning of this word. And whether they said it directly or created new words, which happened a lot, and also redefined old words. Like, for instance, people throw things around, the patriarchy. I never heard that word ever.
Right.
Until I was 34 years old. Never heard it. Never.
Right.
Also, and I'm not saying I had to Google it to understand what it meant. Am I saying that doesn't exist in the world? I'm sure it does. I just don't think it really exists here as much as people think, because I've never heard it before, but maybe I just wasn't in the club. So I'm not discrediting anybody. Don't jump in the comments. But, I take the word hate, right? So you asked if we were at war earlier, and I kind of went off on a tangent, but the definition of war has changed. And one thing that people need to realize is people say they hate, they may say, I hate Donald Trump. You don't hate Donald Trump. You're regurgitating what other people have said. You've never met the man. You can't name 3 of his policies. You can't name the 3 branches of government and what their general functions are. And that's the first thing I ask somebody. If they want to get political, I'll get political, but I'm going to ask you what the 3 branches of government are and what their functions are. And if you can't tell me that, I'm not going to have the discussion. You don't know enough for me to have the discussion with you. Just like I don't have a discussion about menstrual cycles, because I don't know. The only thing I know of is the duck when they throw things. So that's you don't talk about things you don't have information to back it up with, or at least some sort of understanding. So what I'm getting at with hate and them not understanding hate, even when people say they hate Joe Biden, no, you don't. I don't hate Joe Biden. I don't think he did a good job. I don't think he I don't think he's all there. I don't hate the man. I don't wish ill on him. I don't wish ill on any people, really, because I believe in karma. But other countries, they hate us, and they don't know us. They don't hate you, Damian, me, Ryan. They hate the idea of America. They hate it so much that it's in their DNA. They don't. Well,
let's be clear, right? That it's not without reason.
Oh, right. Well, with them hating us.
Yes, right.
Yeah, isn't sure.
Again, like we've done some, look, we've got the military industrial complex where, look, we do some shit for, I don't know, weapons of mass destruction or whatever the hell else, real or imagined that we do to, perpetuate the war machine funding all this shit, right? Mm-hmm. There's billions and billions and billions. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of like, and again, we got to be, self-aware. Like my opinion, I'm like, we, create this shit, yeah. I grew up, America's always the good guys. And I think we are, but honestly, like, since, let's just say since Gulf of Tonkin,
oh, we got our black eyes too. So
yeah, man. I'm like, we are not taking the responsible route.
Yeah, we can't take the moral high road. Trust me, we are the best, or one of the best at extreme violence on the planet. Our country deals out violence better than anybody, right? That's the reason why people typically don't start fights with us, because if the administration lets the military actually like flex a little bit, it's almost comical.
Right.
And that still stands. I think that there's a question of the new generation answering. They're going to answer the call. Let me rephrase this, and I don't want people to jump on me in the comments.
Well, let them. Again, this is like, you lived it, you served.
Yeah.
You were out there. You were like, you realize our impact on hearts and minds.
And it's a different military. So I have this discussion a lot with a lot of my buddies. I just saw a lot of them for the Army Navy game. We get together every year, and the mindset that we had when we were doing our thing in the early years at GWAT, this generation doesn't have it, right? Like,
we were coming off 9/11.
Right. So we were
like,
pissed.
Fuck you. You're either with us or against us. We were galvanized. What's fucking fucked up is that it twisted it and fucking used it to continue to perpetuate.
People got rich. Oh yeah, a lot of people I didn't get rich. I got hurt. Course. I didn't get rich.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, when I'm sitting there and I'm like, I've got like my son and I've got, his buddies, and they're like, talk about the shit. I'm like, yeah. I go, look, I want you to just understand. I go, and I'm looking at it as a middle-aged man, understanding that when I was their age, given things going on, I would felt the same way. I was like, I got appointed to the Naval Academy. I blew out my knee and, took a different route. Mm-hmm. But it was like, yeah, dude, I wanted to fucking go. I was all in. Mm-hmm. I'm like, you know what? I'm like, it's okay. You gotta like, there's a broken trust between our government and our military.
Huge. And the civilians. So you got three
right.
Yeah.
So, where you're like, look, you want to send my son to fucking war, it better be not over some yellow cake bullshit. Mm-hmm. He better be liberating some poor son of a bitch that's being fucking skinned alive in a concentration camp. Yep. Right? Just because of their fucking religion. Right. And
battling real evil, which is what it used to be. World War II. That was evil. Let's go beat up evil. Okay.
Right. And again, we look at the fucking Vietnam, right? Mm-hmm. They won. Let's face it. And look, the world didn't fall to communism. Right. I fucking, you're like, I'm sitting here and I'm like, I'm looking at like China, right? Mm-hmm. And you're like, okay. I'm like, have they invaded anybody? When's the last time they invaded? I guess they invaded Japan. God knows when. This is like World War II shit.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, they lead with economics, right? You lead with economy. You fucking do that.
It's not doing so good anymore, though.
I know that, right? Well, what happens when you tell people to stop fucking, having kids?
Yeah.
You wind up losing your fucking workforce.
Yeah.
Why aren't we? Hey, okay, we're in Afghanistan. Guess what? We're going to put it in an iPod factory. We're going to come and train you guys how to fucking do this shit. We're putting a McDonald's across the fucking street.
They'd love it.
Right. You can get all the orange soda and fish sandwiches you fucking want. Mm-hmm. and I go, and now you're fucking, and next thing you know, guess what? They're not trying to kill us because, Muhammad has got his, he's got a job building these fucking things, and his standard of living has gone up, and he doesn't have to worry. I'm like, why aren't we building roads, schools, fucking, it's like, holy shit.
It's, I don't, it really is it's a weird situation that we're in now, because I think we're at, again, we'll go back to the question, are we at war? I think we're always at war, 24/7 as America. We're constantly, it's just a war fought in unconventional and dark corners for most of the time. I mean, we have the amount of cyber attacks we get a day. They're just like lobbing them over here, just like,
well, it doesn't really cost anything, and you might as well just fucking just do it. Right. So my question is, it's like, okay, since 9/11, right, we've obviously been, they've been, our enemies have been slowly infiltrating this country. Mm-hmm. I mean, my feeling is, based on zero data and intel, is that for the past 20 years, they've been slowly setting up an infrastructure. And now, over the last several years, the warriors start coming in. Like, so for the past 20 years, they've been setting up, like, okay, so-and-so owns a shop over here, or he's a manager at a Home Depot, or, this guy's got a mosque or a church or where the fuck he's, they've got places for these people to come in and live and stay. So now the warriors are coming in to start, the next, that next wave. Like the suicide vests are already built, right? It's all here waiting for them. And the guys who are coming over are just like, because look, let's face it, if you lived here for like 20 years, you're kind of assimilated. Yeah. You got family, that was the one thing why the difference, like we say about Russian sleeper cells, didn't work too well, is because, when they're hanging out by the pool with a steak, and the neighbors are like, it ain't too bad. Right?
Yeah.
Right. So, they've got that level in here who are loyal, but you know what? They're not going to go in and blow themselves up.
Well, no, I mean, that's more of a, that's always been more of a, ISIS, Al Qaeda type tactic than it was the Russians. But to your point, the martyrdom is not as attractive when you live here for half a generation and you're like, man, things aren't bad. I got a nice house. I got a dog. I got this. All of a sudden, big bad America isn't so bad. Excuse me, I plugged this in.
Right.
But the idea of, quote unquote, sleeper cells or whatever we want to call them, I think some countries are more predisposed to the long game, if that makes sense, right? That's Chinese. They are very patient people, very, very calculated people. Whether or not we have the same coming from, the Al-Qaedas and the ISIS of the world, I'm not sure. I will ask, though. I know I have some of the analysts that I work with putting together a perspective for 2025 and what they think might affect the country in a major way. And I'm sure we'll touch on this. But I definitely think that it is plausible, borderline likely, that there has been an exploitation of the, let's face it, open borders over the past administration for people to say, if we're going to do it, it's now, because they saw the writing on the wall, right? That's why there's been a lot of money. Look at how much money went into the Harris campaign. That's real in 3 months. Yeah. I think, so I believe, Ryan Quirk believes, that there are parties who did not want the administration to shift because the open borders is good for business. So they're going to make a lot of money, and good for any end objectives they might have, like creating chaos and terror.
So what do you mean by good for business from that perspective?
I mean, not that it's a good thing, but I mean, you got the HT stuff with people as currency, right? I don't want to say it needs to get docked.
No, right. Human trafficking people. Yes.
There you go. So you got that going on. You have the movement of drugs. You got the movement of really anything that could be illegal. I mean, hell, the cartels are now selling illegal avocados, which is apparently very lucrative.
That's insane. Yeah, I saw that. Again, the cartels in terror, different, same negative effect, but
right.
Yeah, that's happened in parallel as we're seeing,
But who do you think are the experts at getting things from A to B across a landmass of the southern
right.
variety?
Yeah.
They're the experts, right? And they're
They're
the
the guys.
people. They own the parkway, right? We drive on the parkway, we pay the tolls. They are the toll collectors. So
right.
if you want to get a bunch of people and not have to answer questions across a border, I'm pretty sure the cartel isn't going to ask questions. They're going to go, cool, your rate's double because you have a different face.
Right.
And we won't ask questions, but it's double. It's
right.
funny, man. It's a business. And I don't care what anybody says. Organized crime runs like a business.
Yeah, well, I mean, cartels are Fortune 500 companies. I mean, people don't realize like these are like some of the largest companies in the world. Yep. And you don't get that way without like massive organization and intelligence and logistics. I'm like, it's just
right.
It's a massive business. So to think, I think when people think of criminal enterprises, they have a tendency to think that they're very lowbrow, but the reality is they have to operate outside the law. So they've got to be even more savvy, even more brazen than, the guy who can pay a team of lawyers to fucking, get it done. They got their team of lawyers, right. But, they got to where they got to because they had to kill some motherfuckers.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
they're in their bones. Yeah.
Pablo Escobar was not he was not like, the most popular guy. Yeah, dude, people were scared to shit of him. So, he killed dudes. So I'm like, you do what you want to do with somebody. If you've been around somebody who's killed multiple, people, I mean, this is a dude.
Yeah.
It's fucking scary. So
it is.
You're like, so, I think most people just don't. Everyone always projects their own experiences and their own values on what you do. Right. What somebody else does. And the reality is you have no idea.
No.
So, when you sit there and you can automatically make these assumptions like, maybe not. So we had that. So we first have the attack in New Orleans. And then what's your beat on this fucking Green Beret, man?
Listen, man, I have a lot of friends who are Green Berets, and some of the best operators I've ever worked with were Green Berets. I mean, it's a huge black eye for them.
Explain, if you will, what it takes to be one of these fucking guys.
So the process has changed a bit in recently. So back in the day, Green Berets typically you didn't go through selection until you were older, right? Now people are going right into it. They get a package and they're going in in their younger 20s, which we all know when you're in your young to mid 20s, you're not mature yet at all. You're still
not even in your 50s, by the way. Just
exactly. So right. I just laughed at a fart yesterday. So that just shows you how mature I am. But but really, what it is, the one thing that the Green Berets have in my opinion, mastered, and everybody's trying to learn from them, which is why MARSOC actually leaned on Special Forces instructors.
Tell everyone what MARSOC is, the acronym.
So MARSOC is Marine Special Operations Command. That's the Marine Raiders, right? It was disbanded, and then they brought it back. They didn't have a unit that was actually a part of.
What pisses me off about that is they took out Raiders.
I'll tell you what, the MARSOC, all the guys I know that are Raiders, awesome dudes.
Yeah, at least you still call yourself Raiders.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Fuck that MARSOC shit.
It's a long pipeline. It's a long pipeline. It's a lot. But so with Special Forces, what typically to get selected, number one, you got to have good scores rather. You got to be recommended. They look at everything. You get recommended from people within your unit, and then when you go through the training, it's not the type of training that you can just get through because people do, but it's not the type of training that you typically can get through just because you're a physical phenom. You got to be smart. Like these guys are some of the smartest people in special operations, and they have an aptitude for taking, let's say, uncertain and unfamiliar situations and looking at them, analyzing it, and then kind of molding it to their benefit to achieve a goal, whether it's overthrowing, an incumbent government or whatever. They're just experts at, unconventional warfare, non-permissive environments. I mean, everybody that I've ever been trained by or worked with that was a Green Beret, paramount of professionalism. And, they also don't hold themselves too seriously, right? They're not like always turned on. When it's time to relax, they're the first ones to be like, cool.
It's been my experience that people who are at that level have a great sense of humor. Mm-hmm. And know how to, they're not until the switch is flipped.
Right.
When it actually has to be flipped, not some fucking bullshit. It's everybody's they're chill because how this can end.
Right.
Right. And it's like probably you going to jail. Mm-hmm. So it's like,
don't get me wrong, they have their idiots just like every other branch.
Right. Nothing is perfect. So, getting back to, this guy,
he's actively, he requested leave. That's the crazy thing. He could have just left and nothing would have happened. His command, let me tell you what realistically would have happened. If he just left, if he just woke up and was like, fuck it, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Because you have to request permission to go on leave. But let's
explain what happened, because I'm not familiar with this part of the story. All I know is that he was having problems with his wife. I think they were separated.
Yeah.
I read his manifesto. He was a Trump guy, but then he's wearing a Ukraine shirt. So that kind of confused me.
Yeah.
And that he chose to, he had gunshot wounds and then he blew himself up where he did. I feel if he was trying to get massive loss of life, it would have happened at a different time and a place and a different fucking vehicle, because that thing did not blow up. So I can't make sense of what, I don't know. I can't wrap my head around that situation.
Well, it is what strikes me as weird. I watched the Sean Ryan podcast, and good on him for putting that out there so quick. But what strikes me as weird is the behavior is just odd. And he may just be an odd person. For instance, when you go on leave from the military, you can't just bounce, right? You have to stay within a certain distance, depending on your unit, maybe closer, further, whatever it is. And you need to request permission. There's a whole paperwork process. Tell them where you're going, how long, yada, yada. So he went through, and it's not an easy process. Now, I'm sure when you're in an ODA and you're in Europe, it's probably much easier than it was for me as a young Marine.
What's an ODA for people?
Operational Detachment Alpha. That's what Green Berets are part of ODAs, and the ODA will have a number or something like that.
Right.
So he requested permission for leave. He didn't have to do that. And especially when you're dealing with specialized units like that and people that are, he's got his time in, they're very expensive to train. It's hard to make other ones. So it's expensive. So
nobody thinks, by the way, I'm glad you brought that up, because nobody thinks about that. How much money goes in. The first, you got to find them, and then you got to train them.
Yeah.
And then, so now we got this toy, or I'm more to the point, this weapon.
Yeah.
Millions
and millions of dollars it took, because they got to go to DLI. They got to go to the Defense Language Institute. And depending on which ODA they're going to, or what group they're going to, I should say, that's where they tend to serve. So if they're going to South America, those guys are nuts. They're going to go learn Spanish, or they're going to learn something, maybe, Portuguese, if they're going to be in Brazil or something like that. So these are smart people. They literally are so smart that they teach them to kill things, overthrow governments, and then go, oh, by the way, learn a language while you're at it. So they're very smart people. Yeah. So this smart, prudent person put in a leave request when what he could have done is just left. What would have happened is his team leader would have been like, where the hell is Joe? They would have blew his phone up. They would have hid it for a couple of days because they didn't want to get in trouble. They didn't want Joe to get jammed up.
For him. Yeah,
they would have covered for him. Of course. And then eventually they'd be like, I got to go tell him. Somebody would lose rock, paper, scissors. They'd go in and say, hey, Joe's gone. He's been gone since Tuesday. But that didn't happen. He put a request in when he didn't have to. But, maybe he did that so he didn't raise any flags. Okay. But if he wasn't planning on making the return trip, who cares? So if he was planning on hitting a button and never going home again, why would you go through that trouble? You only go through that trouble if you don't want a red flag.
My only instinct is like, look, he didn't want to fail on his mission. Right. So
that is most dangerous. So you got most likely, most dangerous, right?
Yeah. Yep. So he didn't want to. He said, look, he goes, I don't want somebody to be like, hey, where the fuck's Joe? Mm-hmm. You know, he's like, you know, I'm supposed to be gone. I'm gone. Right. So there's that. I mean, you know, choosing, you know, people like we're shitting on what he choose for explosives. I'm like, you know, they don't understand. Like,
oh, that's smart.
You know, a 55-gallon drum of gasoline does a lot of goddamn damage. And look up Beslan, Russia, and what they did there with the siege of the school, and all they used was gasoline. I mean, gasoline in a fucking drum or a container with fireworks. People are like, what? I'm like, you're watching too many fucking movies. You know, was he going to go get fucking C4 and, you know, detonation cap? I'm like, the paperwork involved to go get that shit.
Control.
He did what he's trained to do.
Source materials to achieve a goal or a mission.
So he can stop by the fireworks store. He can stop by the gas station
and buy it. Yeah.
Great.
No, it's sophistication. So, you know, I'll plug my buddy's company, Arcadia Cognerati. You know, he always says the most dangerous adversary is a low level of sophistication with a high level of organization. Keep it simple, dude. So if they're able to procure items that are otherwise readily available or open source, he can, over the course of a couple of days, stop at Target, grab a box, stop at another Target, grab a box, then, you know, do what you got to do. I'm not going to go into it on the podcast, but do what you do, collect everything. And now you got a bigger bang than you started with, you know?
So, you know, then it comes down to, okay, he picked the wrong vehicle and he picked the wrong location. Unless he was trying to make a statement, because obviously you got the Cybertruck in front of Trump. I mean, that is a fucking, you gotta think about it. You don't gotta be Fellini to figure this out. Right? So I'm like, dude, okay, that's a statement. But then you're reading like his manifesto. I'm still confused, you know, as to, you know, why, you know, he did that and sacrificed his life
to not do anything. He didn't damage anything but a truck.
Yeah.
That you rented. So the only person who got fucked was
the rental company, but
the rental company.
Insured, so, you know, that's it.
Really nothing happened. You made a couple newsreels and you made people start talking about stuff, and maybe that was the goal. That's the thing. We don't know what the goal was. There's a lot of unanswered questions. You know, terrorism by definition, uses violence and fear to achieve a political goal or a goal. I just think, and I think for a long time, a lot of these organizations who are supposed to be investigating things. I mean, how many times have you heard, they had them on their radar, or they had them. Well, you know what? You guys do not have a good batting average. If you were on my baseball team, I would release you to waivers.
Right.
Like what? I keep hearing near misses, you know?
I mean, you always got to get, so how many people you have on your radar and how many you stopped, right? I mean, that's really kind of the question, right? So if we've got 100 credible threats and we stop 95 of them, we're actually doing pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know this number. You can't, get a guy, you can't pull over a guy, you can't arrest a guy for, buying a couple fireworks and some gas, and renting a Tesla and fucking going to Vegas. Sounds like he's probably going to have a pretty good fucking time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, this guy's going to have a party.
Holy shit. I mean, maybe he's meeting Hunter Biden. Right. So,
yeah.
Dude, that dude's a good time. I'll give a shit what anybody says.
I was just going to say, listen, I'm not justifying anything, but something tells me he's been to some crazy parties. That's
bro, he's been to a Diddy party or two.
Yeah. That situation. I can't wait to see how that shakes out. That's phenomenal.
I'm like, I think, on that, I think there's a way certain elite classes operate, and it's all about leverage. I mean, Skull and Bones.
Remember that movie?
Epstein Island. Fucking, they get you to in a position where, like, yeah, man, this is fucking great, and then they just got it on you.
compromise,
like,
brother.
Yeah. And you're just like, all right, this is what it is. So, yeah, I think that's been since the beginning of time. Doesn't make it right, but there's the whole, sex trafficking shit that is going on that gets largely ignored, because all of a sudden it became a QAnon thing, and you're like, yeah, okay. We let's just say, I don't know, maybe they're generally crazy, but on this, you gotta kind of like, they wrong, I'm like, we gotta look at this shit. But it fucking, that gets ignored. So
I think there's a lot of fat that has to be cut from a lot of these, listen, to the listeners, wherever you sit on the political spectrum, everybody has to be for this Doge thing. Let's cut out all the wasteful spending. There's so many law enforcement agencies. People have no idea how many law enforcement agencies exist, and a lot of them have like such small little niches.
Let's look at New Jersey for a moment.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So you've got state police, county police, sheriff's departments, your local town police. What am I missing?
No, that's about it. But then don't forget, then you have like human services police. There's a bunch of
prosecutor's office.
Right. And there's other state level ASPCA police, I think it was human services. There's probably ones I don't know about. And I was on the job in Jersey. Right. So,
I mean, at
the federal level, it's even crazier.
To be honest, it should just be state police. I mean, think about it. Your state police assigned to, Saddle River.
They have taken over. When was it? Camden? Remember when Camden? They fired everybody.
Because it's massively corrupt.
Yeah.
And it was
Jersey.
Like, hey, congratulations, fuck you, Detroit, we win. So it's the fucking shithole. But yeah, I mean, you should have just state police. I mean, let's face it. It's like, okay, we got state police, assigned here. And then, we don't need a fucking, we don't need a chief. We got a, you got a commander, you got, there's like too many layers of shit. You're like, you have corrections officers. Okay, great. That's fine. But then you got, correction officers like out on the street, the sheriff's department. I go, it's just so much shit. And these little fiefdoms where you're like, you don't need that. Dude, with the fire department, everything should be fucking paid, and there should be regional fucking fire departments. You don't need, every town doesn't need their own little fire department. You don't. So, because the reality is, and we talk about this I'm like, look, everybody's got fucking insurance. If your house burns down, it'll get rebuilt. It'll get paid. The only reason is you really need somebody's for loss of life. And to make sure that it doesn't spread. Yeah. So, by the time we generally would show up to a job, people are out of the house, and then we come in and knock it down. So, can this be handled by regional? Yeah, for sure. People who are training all the time, that are more proficient, because I'm going to tell you people, if there's an actual job, everyone and their mother shows up and it's a fucking shit show. And I'm surprised like more people just don't die. But it's so it's what it is. We all know
engines from everywhere come over, and usually the bigger house will say we got it, and then they
it's like or guys will come into your jurisdiction and then fuck your SOPs. We're just gonna do what we normally do. Then you got a guy who's ex-chief and 78 coming in with a walker, start barking orders on shit. You're like, what the fuck, dude? What the fuck? Talk to the chief.
There's so many at the federal level. There's so many agencies that don't need to exist. They're really, you got the VA. You got VA police officers. They don't leave their little tiny plot of land. You got VA police officers, Secret Service police officers. You have this, and listen, nothing against them. Nothing against any of these guys. If I saw them and they needed help, I'd help them. But there has, from a spending perspective, we forget about that part, right? So there's two parts, there's two sides to the coin. One is the human aspect. No, I don't want anybody to lose their job. That's not what I'm saying has to happen. What I'm saying is there has to be a better a better spending and budgetary apparatus than currently exists. There's just nobody can pass audits. You don't know where the money goes.
Audit? Like, the Pentagon hasn't passed an audit ever.
Right. And they're like, well, that just means we don't know where it is. Number one, that's
an audit.
That's what an audit is. You just described an audit.
Christ, that's the whole point of it.
And I'm watching it and I'm like, but you don't know where anything is. And you had the vice president going, we don't have any troops overseas. And the guys deployed are like, what the fuck
am I doing in Yemen again?
Like, dude, it's like the Twilight Zone. I just don't understand. And my opinion, because I know a lot of people they're in business and very successful in business. I believe that every administration should be business heavy. It's a country or a state is a corporation. Newsflash, people, running a country or a state is like running a major, major corporation with a lot of other subdivisions. It's the reality. You can argue against it. I'm not going to listen to you because you're wrong. Right. I don't speak
again, the problem is because people are career politicians, and people don't want to think about shit. They worry about their day-to-day shit, and they're assuming we've got the best and the brightest doing whatever the fuck we're doing. And to be honest with you guys, I've had a very small foray into local politics. These are the worst and the dumbest. I'm like, and it only gets worse going on. It's like the tallest midget contest, So I'm like, dude, I'm talking to you, and I'm like, I don't think I'm the sharpest tool in the drawer, but I'm like, I'm getting dumber just listening to you, So I'm like, I don't want to talk to you ever again. I don't know what just happened. I'm like, So either way, these aren't people. When one buddy who was an advisor to Chris Christie in his first two years, he's like, my take on New Jersey politics. He's like, I could go to Great Adventure at any time and grab the first 100 people coming through the door and find 100 smarter people than everyone I'm dealing with every day.
Yeah.
You know? And he's like, he'd be like, someone would come up to me like, hey, Chris said XYZ. And he's like, okay, I'm going to go meet with him now and ask him about this. And then they'll be like, oh, wait. No. And he's like, are you kidding me?
Right.
It's like, what the
People
hell?
Are weird, dude. People are so weird.
It's like, well, there's all this failing forward, So, it's like this. They're like, because if they said it to somebody who was also not supposed to be there and stupid and like, why, clearly an imposter, it's like, they're not going to, they're like, oh yeah, Chris said it. Okay. I'm not going to bring it up to him because he said it. He said it. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. So why would I bring it up to him?
That's what it is. They want to just kind of be we used to call it a stanchion recruit in boot camp. The person who never messed up and never did anything good. They just wanted to be left alone, like blend in. And that's what they want. They want to be left alone because they want to collect their little pension, have a little semblance of power. When they get pulled over, they can go, I'm a council member.
Right.
And the cops are like, Jesus, I don't care. Just get, get out of here. And now because, so here's the funny thing. Let me give you an exact example. Cops will love this one. So this goes to show you how politicians, by and large, I'm not speaking for all of them, but politicians, by and large, do not think further than 5 feet in front of their face. Here's an example. Okay. When I was on a full-time special operations unit, we didn't have any body cameras or anything. They started to implement body cameras. So we're going, well, if we get body cameras, there's going to be, the reports are going to be longer, is what we said. And so some politicians said, we want body cameras, local level and state level politicians said, we want body cameras. Okay, fine. They push for it. They, champion it. They get the body cameras. Now, when they get pulled over and they've had a little too much to drink or they aren't wearing their seatbelt or whatever it is, now they're trying to go, well, I'm a council member. You can't write me a ticket. Hey, asshole. They can't let you go because they're recording everything. You did this. They didn't. None of the cops wanted body cameras initially. Now they actually like them because guess what? It went up in their faces. It helped the cops because it
helped them. That's what I was going to say. I'm like, if you're doing a good job and you're doing your job, you want the fucking camera.
The cops, now it makes discretion an issue where if they pull somebody over, then they, I remember a time when
we were part of the job.
Right. But you can't really, it's limited it, because here's the thing. You're asking that officer, if that officer pulls you over and maybe let's say you've had 2 shots, right? You get there, your BAC might still be in line. It's close, but it's still technically legal. So now that cop goes, hey, dude, because I remember when I was younger, hey, man, I pulled you over for speeding. I smell alcohol. Have you been drinking? I have said yes, but I only had 1. Well, the cop would then use his or her judgment, to ascertain whether or not I was inebriated and I could, safely, operate the motor vehicle. Fine. They would say, all right, you know what, get out of here. Here's your warning, what have you. Never an issue. Yes, officer, drive home. They've removed that capability, because that officer, what you're asking that officer to do is to put his job, his family's livelihood on the line for you, stranger, which he won't do. And I wouldn't expect.
My answer is always no, officer.
Correct. I mean, the answer is always no. But there was a time when, you could potentially say, yeah, I have. And they go, all right, get the hell out of here. Or, hey, I remember when, back in the day, they give you a ride home. I've been driven home by the cops.
Yeah, for sure.
And they just told me, figure out where your car is. There was no Uber, so that was a pain in the ass.
Right.
But
so to wrap up, so 2025, what do you think, how do you think this is going to go with what's happening as far as, who's in our country now? My feeling is that, okay, they try to sell a war overseas to us, right? We're like, fuck you. We don't want to send any more money to Ukraine. We don't got to get involved in Israel. Piss off. We're done. Okay, fine. Let's create a war here. Now, you can't, there's either, escalating fucking nuclear war with Russia, which, again, still I feel highly unlikely. But even though the words nuclear, could, tactical nuke comes out of politicians' mouth, I want to fucking blow my brains out.
Yeah.
Right. But, that's a whole other fucking thing.
It's oxymoronic. Every nuke is tactical in nature.
Right. Exactly. So my feeling is, it's like they can't sell the war overseas, but we can sell the war at home. And now we've set these people in place. So yeah, here we are. Right. I'm like, it's like, ISIS, Al Qaeda, they're here. They're the CIA targeter on Sean Ryan, saying that they've trained like 1,000, soldiers, and they're already gone, so they're deployed. So this has happened. So
yeah, I mean, I think I believe that we have been in the middle of a very, very large disinformation and influence campaign. What they were influencing towards, or, what the disinformation was trying to drive us towards, there's a couple different possibilities, but I do think there's been a reason there's been such a ramp up in social media, in what's being fed to us, right? There's a reason why TikTok here is different than TikTok in China, right? It's nothing by chance, okay? You have these countries, like I mentioned earlier, the long game, right? We talked about the long game. Russia and China specifically, in my opinion, are long game players. Very, very smart. They're very smart, and they are, like I said, when there is an actual hatred towards a country just based on the idea, they hate the idea of us. It's not, they don't hate a person. They hate the idea of what we have. When you have that, that's a very strong motivator. And when you have a population that you could really turn it up to level 10, they don't have labor laws, right? So they can just be like, you're going to design this thing or something bad might happen. And I'm just really going egregious with what they might be doing, but it's probably happening, right? To some people who maybe are like, I don't want to design this. They're like, tough. But when you have countries that are capable, both from a mindset perspective and a technological perspective, and they actually hate us. And then you have these disinformation and influence things going on, the fact checkers, the independent fact checkers that nobody could identify on social media. They're controlling what you see. And what you see and what you digest is going to influence your behavior, what you buy. So I think all of this has been happening. I think that it is certainly plausible that there are people who have been trained and sent here because, and I would be less inclined to say it's plausible if we didn't have this unexplainable just influx of people across the southern border. No one can explain why it happened. They're saying, oh, it's because people deserve a free, a free shake. They deserve a better life. Well, when you see people coming through the border who look nothing like the indigenous people who live on that side of the border or this side of the border, maybe start asking questions. Maybe go, hey, where are you from? Because it's not just Mexicans, Ecuadorians, Salvador. It's Chinese, it's Russians, it's Ukrainians, it's Somalis, Haitians.
Yeah.
Okay, enough's enough. Nothing against any of these countries, but when you start seeing people from all different countries or regions in the world coming through a border relatively unimpeded, maybe you shut the screen door for a second.
To quote our newly appointed director of Homeland Security, he's like, look, you come through a legal point of entry, go right ahead. Very simple, right? I'm like, what we're seeing is, these aren't, and to come through unvetted is insane.
It's nuts.
I'm like, you can't, I've got like one of my liberal friends. He travels a lot. He's, his family's done well for themselves. And he's like, well, I go to Europe. I go anywhere. I go, yeah, dude, it's the European Union, dude. You've already shown your passport at the border. I'm like, travel without a passport. Can you get in? Can you get on the flight?
No.
Yeah, right. So I'm like, I go, you're really not
the ticket without putting your passport number in.
Yeah, I'm like, you're really like not, I'm like, it's not that. It's like, you're asking people to come in and, it gets funny because, like, again, like, with the asylum seekers and shit like that, I'm like, yeah, come through a legal port of entry and apply. A buddy of mine is a circuit court judge, and he's one of the 60 some odd judges that was adjudicating the immigration, right? He goes, look, they get a fucking court date, they show up or don't show up, we issue a bench warrant, there's nobody there to enforce the bench warrant because
they don't know who they are.
And by the way, he goes, we have, like, literally, it's like based on I think there's like 60 some odd judges, don't quote me on this, but he's like, they've got like a lifetime worth of work based on the millions of shit, millions of cases they have to adjudicate. It's fucking insane.
Yeah.
And, they're all here and they're all like, look, I put together an article, and this will be another podcast where, first off, like, two things. One, we talk about women's rights, right? So everyone's, women's right to choose, and, it's a tricky subject. I would say, on some level, I understand I'm pro-life in a lot of circumstances, but again, I understand I'm pro-choice in other circumstances. But that's not the only woman's right.
Right.
How about, Lake and Riley down in Georgia, right? Who was murdered and raped. What about her fucking rights?
Yep.
What about, the crime that is committed against women from people who come in? Yeah, obviously citizens commit crime against women all the time, but now you've got, known criminals into our country preying on women because that's what fucking criminals do. Whether no matter what country you're
a criminal is always going to be a criminal. So I mean, a true criminal. Let me. I know a lot of people who used to be criminals who are good people now. A true criminal. These types, they don't change. It's in there. It's here. They don't change. Okay. Not those types.
And that's what, and that's what you're talking about, women's rights. Again, I'll leave the fucking sports, shit out of it, which isn't shit, but it's not part of. And the other thing, I mean, again, a woman's right to compete and, in a fucking testosterone or former testosterone free environment, whatever the fuck it is. You know, women's sports, I guess that doesn't factor into it. The other thing I want to bring up is like guns rights, weapons rights are women's rights.
Right.
You know, so all these fucking restrictions you place on weapons, all these restrictions you place on pepper spray, knives.
It's an equalizer. A weapon equalizes the fight. A woman, I'm going to say it, 99.99% of if I wanted to hurt a woman, there are few women that would be able to stop me. Not because I'm John Wick. It's because I'm bigger, stronger, faster, and more aggressive. So what I believe the equalizer for women is training, which you yourself know a great deal about. And also an equalizer, the ultimate equalizer is a firearm.
And all the training includes weapons.
Right.
You know, if
weapons of opportunity.
Yep. I've got a 110-pound daughter, 120-pound daughter. I'm like, fucking gun, pepper spray, neck knives, shit like that. I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah, gouge, bite, do all those shit. But Jesus Christ, man, you know, use the shit that is available to you and prepare yourself. And, you know, at least, you know, if some guy's is on top of you trying to rape you and he's fucking 200 something pounds and you grab a fucking punch dagger out and start fucking putting him in, you know, put it in his kidney and his ribs. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, that fucking works. Don't fucking try to do whatever shit you're trying to do. I'm like, the empty hand shit is the lowest rung of the fucking of the ladder. You know, and I'm watching these guys like, I'm like, well, I know a girl. I'm like, look, I know exceptions to the rule too. But again, you know, against a determined larger attacker,
it's difficult. It's difficult for a man to do that.
Yes.
It's difficult for me. If a guy weighs 80 more pounds than me, I'm in trouble. I try not to fight that dude. Like I avoid him actively.
By the way, I don't fight shit. You know what I mean? I'm like ending this fucking shit.
Right.
And that's where, you know, these people like, you know, you're looking at, I'm like, you're fucking, I go, you're fighting against guns, but you're against guns and you're pro-choice. You're missing something fundamental here.
Mm-hmm.
You want a woman's right. I go, what about a right not to get raped or murdered?
Yeah.
You know, okay, I understand, like, she wants to kill a baby. That's what it is. So we can say what it is. I love Louis C.K. He fucking does a bit where it's like, it's like you're baking a cake. It could be in the oven, but if you take out that fucking tray and throw it on the fucking floor, you still ruined the cake. Right? So I'm like, it is what it is. That's fine. I'm all for killing babies, people. If you want to fucking, you know, like you want to fucking kill your baby and it doesn't fucking wind up fucking trying to kill me later as it grows up, great. Right? So whatever. You know, you want to sit there and tell me, you know, that, you know, you're for, you know, these women's rights. But then when it comes to a woman, like I get fucking women that are like, well, what if I get frisked? I'm like, I'm like, how often have you been frisked in your life?
Yeah, you shouldn't be getting frisked all the time unless you're going into a jail or.
Right, unless you're like working the street. But I'm like, it's probably zero. So I'm like, you're sitting there walking around with these weapons on you. I'm like, you're not going to get frisked. Again, you know, you got to and that's part of the training is to like teach people to be like, okay, if you're gonna fucking beat the wolf, you got to fucking be a little wolf.
I'll tell you what, one thing I've noticed, and this is, I saw it in law enforcement when I was teaching academy level classes, and I've seen it, and I have enough data now to positively say this. In my life, I have found that women are inherently better natural shooters than men.
Okay.
By far, because I believe it is because when they go into the situation, men have this bravado thing, right? Men, they don't want to say, oh, I don't know what I'm doing to another dude, right? It's kind of like I'm a dude, you're a dude. Where women will literally look at you and they'll hang on every word because they actually are like, well, show me. I don't know how to do this. Show me.
Right.
So when I explain it, I can tell they're hanging on every word. And then when I tell them to apply it, they go step by step in the early stages. That's all shooting is. Step
Great
one,
point.
Step two, step three. And their targets, they're shooting knots. And I've seen it time and time again. Women are better shooters naturally.
I mean, other than the aggression end of it, from what I do, because guys are normally the testosterone, but 100% have found that to be completely true.
Right. There's only one part of the equation. They don't have the will to actually engage a human and not a paper person. But from a paper target, I have found that they are better beginner shooters.
I always one of the things I like to do is, when you're doing these things, you talk about like doing some nasty shit to another person. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, I could never do that to somebody. Like, okay, well, what if that person was, think of the fucking thing you love the most, whether it's your kid, your dog, your dad, your goldfish, whatever it is. And then if someone trying to do something to that, now what does that happen? All of a sudden they fucking, they're like, fuck that guy. Blah, 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 right. So when you defer that, because when people think about, oh, I couldn't do that. I'm like, what if he's trying to fucking do that to your kid? Well, I'll fucking kill him. I'm like, okay, let's hold that thought.
Right. Yeah. Pin in that one. Yeah.
Right.
But I'll tell you what, I have seen a lot of the staff that support Sparrow are women, and they're bad ass women.
Yeah, dude.
I'll say it right now. And their careers are absolutely insane. But I've seen mothers flip that switch when they thought their kid was in trouble and maybe the father wasn't there, was at work, wasn't in the picture. You want to get in between a woman and her kid, go right ahead. I don't know what your wife would do to somebody.
A woman, I know what she does to me. I mean, a woman that enters into this field is a fucking badass, right? I'm like, because it is a testosterone-ridden fucking world.
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, okay, let's fucking go. And I'm like, you're riding along and you're going, and they know what the fuck they're up against, and that's the reality of it. I hate women's self-defense courses that have women going against other women, because I'm like, you don't want the fucking guy, because that's what you're gonna fucking face. Pretty much. Unless you're in a women's correctional facility,
right?
Or in high school, for the most part, I go, this is the piece of shit you're gonna have to fucking deal with.
Yeah. Learn with bigger people. A lot of the fancy John Woo moves I learned at various academies and whatnot. You give me a 300-pound guy, I ain't doing them. I can't. I'll blow my knee out. I can't hip toss this guy.
So fucking stupid. So stupid. Like we did a thing last week, like even like fucking George St. Pierre. He did a self-defense video where like a double wrist grab, and he did like the typical fucking grab my own hand. Fucking, I'm like, GSP ain't doing that. I'm like, he's punching him in the face repeatedly and fucking going home. I was like, it was another fight. I don't want to get on tangent, but it's like, the same fucking shit with like self-defense, which drives me crazy. But anyway, we're running over. Dude, so what do you want going on? So plug your shit.
Oh, is that a pause for dramatic effect or?
No, that's you. Go.
Oh, okay, go. Ready, go. All right, everybody.
People get in touch with you. I'll put the fucking links in the bottom, but
all right, appreciate it. Here are the formalities, guys. Appreciate everybody for chiming in. I just realized we had a chat box, and I'm reading it right now.
You want to answer? Go.
Yeah, let's see. Hold on. Let's see what we got here real quick. Cartels or master logistics. That is right, Clayton? Yes. Ask anyone living in Nigeria why they hate us. That's probably a loaded question. A travel visa. Right, Josh, that's a very good point. If your passport has that little symbol on it, that means there's a chip in your passport. Use Faraday bags, guys. Silence got some cool Faraday bags. That's a plug. Even as a guy, I want an equalizer. Yeah. No, everybody's pretty much on board. I think everybody's on the same page, right?
Yeah, we're pushing the require.
Yeah. Right. So, but listen, thanks everybody. Thanks for having me, Damian. Always good to see you. We got to see each other more. So Sparrow Risk Group is my business on the security side of the house. We do, full spectrum security. That's information, intelligence, cybersecurity, and physical security. And then Dads for Defense. We're helping the modern day man become the best version of themselves, where we have online courses, topics like escaping apprehension, right? Zip ties, flex cuffs, how to search for hidden cameras, and other skill sets that I believe a well-versed man should know to protect himself and his family. So that's it. dabsfordefense.com and sparrowrg.com.
And again, we're going every Thursday at 6. Ron, you're always welcome to come back. Everybody, you know, the Bodyguard, Concealed Armor System, self-defense training, blah, 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 blah. We're going to be at SHOT Show. So booth 55906. So if you're at the show, come by, give a shout out. Love to see you. And that's it. Thanks everybody for joining us. As always, until next time, train honestly.
All right, guys, be safe. Thanks, bro.